Hi guys, welcome back aboard our 44-foot hurricane damaged catamaran DIY project boat. It has been raining a fair bit lately and I cannot describe with mere words how awesome it feels to have the boat remain leak-free and dry inside. We do have some tiny leaks from the door and the windows here behind me, but nothing major, and that is crucial for us to be able to move forward. After last week's efforts, we now have both of the diesel tanks out of the boat. What I'd like to do now is to clean them up so we can hopefully figure out if we can reuse them or if I'll have to order new ones. A patron and a friend recommended we try this purple power degreaser stuff, so I picked up some of that, and I've also picked up 3 buckets because whatever gunk we clean out of those diesel tanks, I'm gonna have to figure out some way of disposing of that in a responsible manner. As per the instructions on the container, I mixed up a 5-to-1 delicious purple treat for the tank and gave the outside of the tank a good scrubbing. It was supremely rewarding to see the pressure washer remove a lot of the dirt and grime. While the welds looked really good, I did notice some pitting that became very visible after the cleaning. I used a nylon abrasive wheel to clean around the pitting to get a better look. Those pits are just a hair under half of the thickness of the aluminum. What's even worse is the entire top of the tank is covered in pitting. I decided to take a closer look at the inside of the tank to get the full picture. I angled the tank to get the remaining fuel to pool in one corner and attempted to suck it out with my little sucky contraption, only to have the filter in the jerry can clog. This stuff is pretty nasty. Having removed every single drop of fuel I could get out of there, I poured a healthy amount of degreaser in and swirled the tank around as best as I could. After a visit from Mr. Pressure Washer, I attempted to suck out the unholy mixture inside of the tank only to have it instantly clog the hose. A quick peek inside of the tank revealed lots of chunky debris. Feast your eyes on this gem I just pulled out of there. What the actual heck is this petrified turd doing inside of the diesel tank? Now, I've never had an aluminum tank before, so I don't know if this is maybe something that's specific to aluminum tanks, but I have never seen anything like this before, and it is hella gross. Color me surprised, I can feel handfuls of this stuff inside of the tank. I don't know what the right thing to do is here. The 2 tanks are in very different shape. One looks a lot better than the other. The port one has no pitting that I can see. The starboard one has a bunch of pitting on the top, a little bit on the sides. I think the next step in this process is to figure out what a new tank would cost. I think that's an important piece of this puzzle. There is a stainless and aluminum fabricator just up the road. He has a good reputation, at least from what I've heard, so let me drop this thing off with him and see if he can give me an indication of cost for a new tank. I dropped the tank off at Space Coast Welding and Fabrication. Seems like a nice shop. He should get back to me with a quote a little bit later today. There is another thing we need to check out in regards to the tanks here aboard the boat. Immediately forward of where the 2 diesel tanks sits, this is where the diesel tank in the port hull sits, that area right there. But immediately forward of that, there are water tanks. While the top of this tank is absolutely covered in dust and a little bit of what might be aluminum oxide, there's no pitting or anything like that. And there's a giant opening here for a tank sender unit that I think I can shove my phone into. Let's see what's going on in there. So there is a bunch of, that's probably also aluminum oxide on the welds there. I don't know if that's horrible or not. I'm gonna take a photo of this and show it to the fabrication shop. I am no expert, but my gut is telling me that we can reuse that tank, but we'll see what the fabrication shop has to say. I've cleared out the ton of wiring, plumbing, and stuff that was on top of this tank over here on the starboard side, and it's looking a lot better than the diesel tank that was right out here. That's interesting. Let's repeat the exercise and see what's hiding inside of this tank. It seems to be about the same story with that white stuff on the welds. A little bit elsewhere. It looks a lot like the other tank. Who is ready for some good news? I heard back from the aluminum guy, and he's saying it'll be about $650 for a tank, so $650. That is under half of what I thought it was going to cost, so we might just replace both of the diesel tanks just to have nice, clean tanks. At that price point, I think there's a good argument to be made for replacing both of the fuel tanks. The water tanks, I think they're serviceable, but I'm excited to hear what you guys think. So I think they're serviceable, and in case they ever start leaking, well, they're just going to be leaking water, whereas if the fuel tanks start leaking, they're going to be leaking diesel, which is a bit more of a mess. So yeah. The deal is, I will find all of the fittings I need, including the threaded connections to the tank where, for instance, this little fitting is going to screw into. Those doohickeys look a little bit like this. It's just a ring with threads on the inside that gets welded in place. I've already found those. That was pretty easy. This guy, on the other hand, I really like this fitting. It's a 90, but with a hose barb at the end for the pickups. I have not been able to find these, so if you guys have seen anything like this guy anywhere that I could order it from, I would love to hear about it. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. I think this is 1/4" NPT thread, so yeah, internet, do your magic. It would be awesome if I could find these exact ones or something similar. What we could do is just hold off a little bit on making the decision on the water tanks, get the new diesel tanks back, see if they look good and everything, and then we can reconsider whether or not to get new water tanks also. That'll give me time to get feedback from you guys, so yeah, let's see what happens. You might have noticed the long-sleeved shirt. That is because somebody turned off the heat here in Florida. I didn't think it was going to be possible, but the temperatures have actually dropped at night to something like 48 degrees Fahrenheit or 8 degrees Celsius. It's been amazing. Unfortunately, that is going to be short-lived. It's going to get warm again, and it only just serves to remind me how much I miss living in a colder climate. With the boat nice and dry and the diesel tank situation underway, I want to get back to working on the inside of the bottom of the two hulls. In the next couple of weeks, I want to start working on the engines, and as soon as those are done, I want to have the insides of the hulls ready so we can plop them in right away. But I have noticed that it is a bit dark inside of the boat. The camera does a good job of compensating for it, but in here, to the naked eye, it's pretty dark. And I have this big stack of shop lights from Costco just waiting to get installed, so let's take care of that. Keep in mind, today is a nice sunny day and it's the middle of the day, so the lights might not seem super bright right now, but this is a massive improvement. They're going to make it so much nicer to work inside of the boat on overcast days and also at night. In terms of lumens in here, it's basically like the frickin' surface of the sun. This is perfect. Last week I cleaned out a bunch of junk, like old wiring, plumbing, stuff like that from both of the hulls. I also made a couple of little test patches for paint. There are 2 test patches in this hull and 3 in the other one. The purpose of these are to see if I could use the 2-part paint I wanted to on top of whatever it is that's here today. And there's good news. All 5 of the test patches look perfect. There is no bubbling, no flaking, no weirdness. That means we can forge ahead with the prep work and get ready for paint. I stopped by the tool trailer with my orange bucket to pick up a few tools, including this brand new 5-inch battery-powered sander that I'm very excited to take for a spin. And, of course, we're going to be sanding fiberglass, so I'll need Mr. Dork Helmet. Peering into the abyss, I realized that no good deed goes unpunished. With the new shop lights installed, I could see mountains of dust that was covering every surface. On a side note, this section of the interior is not glassed or attached to the boat, it's just kind of stacked in there. So I might as well get that moved out of the way before somebody gets hurt trying to grab onto it. So far I'm really enjoying my little Bosch vacuum. It's everything I wanted our Dyson vacuum to be, but at a fraction of the cost. This is an ongoing discussion between Ava and me, but I'm definitely team Bosch on this one. The wood that the bracket for the water heater attaches to had a big crack in it, so I decided to remove it. Pro tip to any PDQ or Antares owners out there that want to do the same thing: the wood might be bolted to the boat. With those bolts out of the way, removing it was easy. All over the inside of the hull there were a bunch of little plastic clips for organizing wiring and plumbing. Those will of course need to be removed, and this is a great opportunity to take a closer look at the hull. My plan is to reuse, for lack of a better word, the foundation for the interior, so I want to make sure it's solid. I did find some damage. Fortunately, it was just the little starter battery shelf. The little crack in the surface turned out to be a substantial amount of delamination, as well as a little bit of dry rot. Did you know that 9 out of 10 therapists recommend refitting an old boat to deal with unresolved anger issues? Before completely destroying this shelf, I grabbed some quick measurements to be able to recreate it later on. Armed with the purple degreaser from earlier, I set out to get the inside of the hull as clean as possible. After copious amounts of scrubbing, I hooked up the tiny pressure washer and rinsed everything thoroughly. The big prize at the end of the tunnel was that I then got to repeat the whole tedious process over in the port hull. I let the insides of the hull dry overnight, so now we're ready for a light bit of sanding, a final wipe down, and then some primer. I was planning on painting everything you see in here today, but if it turns out that we want to replace the water tanks, then the only way I can get those out is by cutting a hole here in the bulkhead and dragging them out this way. That means painting this area now would potentially be a little bit of a waste of paint. Also, here on the catamaran, we're not going to have a genset. We're going to eliminate that to save weight and a bunch of cost. Instead, we're going to have a couple of high output alternators. But for reason we'll get back to later, those are going to be mounted out here in this area here, not on the engines themselves. That means I'm not entirely sure there's enough room for the little starter battery shelf over here. So yeah, there's still some unknown things about this general area, which means painting now would not be the best idea. I still want to paint the areas where the engines are going to sit now, because to figure out the alternator situation, I kind of have to have the engines in place. So yeah, let's get on with it. Having just sung the praises of my little Bosch vacuum, I promptly discovered a dislike. I can't use my big 12 amp hour battery with the vacuum. The biggest I can use is the 8 amp hour battery. Anywho, on with the oh glorious sanding. For light surface prep like this, the little battery powered sander is nice. I would not recommend it for anything other than light work. After sanding and vacuuming, I wiped down the surfaces with some of TotalBoat's dewaxer and surface prep. Everything is nice and clean up there now, so we're ready for some primer. And this is what we'll be using. This is TotalBoat's Total Protect. That's going to be the primer. And then for the paint, or the top coat, or whatever you want to call it, we're going to be using Total Bilge. Remember that it's perfectly okay to apply a 1-part paint on top of a 2-part paint. Going the other way can be tricky potentially. Normally I would use a 2-part epoxy primer as a barrier coat, like for instance on the outside of the hull before applying copper coat or anti-fouling. In this case, the big advantage to using the epoxy primer is the fact that it's more likely to get a good grip if the surface isn't absolutely perfect. And in an area like the engine areas up there where there's a lot of little nooks and crannies, that's probably a good thing. That's of course not to say that you should skimp on your prep work. That's always super important, but we're just bending the odds slightly in our favor. I was reading the website and the TDS for Total Protect on TotalBoat's website yesterday, and TotalBoat, I love you guys, but I'm afraid I have a bone to pick with you. Flows well and dries smoothly and evenly. No tedious sanding required. Tedious? Tedious? That's a bit harsh. We all know that sanding is glorious. Otherwise, why would it be printed on this t-shirt? All kidding aside, let's get some primer applied. Those engine areas look pretty dang spiffy, if I do say so myself. I should be able to get a second coat of primer on there a little bit later today, and then I'll apply the total bilge off camera because I'm kind of running out of video shooting time for now because I'm heading to Michigan to celebrate Thanksgiving with Ava. Once everything is painted down there and we've got the engine room insulation on the side of the hull and everything back in, this is gonna look like $1,000,000. And yes, before I get any angry comments, I know I should have been wearing protection, but I keep forgetting to order the correct filter. It's a silly mistake, and I will try to do better. Brian, the previous owner of our hunk of fiberglass here, is back in town with his new boat. He still has some stuff that's supposed to come with the boat at his storage unit, and I've picked up the first few bits. I think the most exciting thing is this brand new Blue Sea panel. It's one of the newer ones, one of the modular ones, and this we can definitely use. There's also 2 electric winches, or there's one top of an electric winch here. I don't think he's entirely sure where the other top is. And then there are the 2 motors for those winches. The motors look a little bit rough. I think he mentioned one of them was submerged. I'm guessing it's going to be this one. We'll see if those work at some point in the future. As far as the winches, this one doesn't look horrible. I think that'll clean up nice. I haven't seen the inside of this, and of course I haven't seen the top of the other winch, which may be in worse shape, but yeah, pretty good. There are also a couple of old sails, an old storm jib, and this guy is supposedly on one of those continuous furling units, but yeah, I also have no idea what shape those sails are in. Brian had also started doing some of the trim for the interior of the boat. This is a big box of what looks like mainly offcuts. He's got some sheet goods up there that are supposed to come with the boat, and yeah, bunch of stuff like that. None of the stuff you've seen here and none of the stuff that's left up at Brian's storage unit is stuff that we need right now. So I've told him there's no rush from our point of view, but at the same time, I don't want him to feel like he's storing stuff for us. So I've told him as soon as he's ready to get rid of it, we'll take it. But yeah, no rush for now. In next week's video, we're going to start the process of putting the engines back together again. I know we have some of the marinization. I think I've seen heat exchangers up there. I don't know if they're in good shape, but I have not seen water pumps, alternators. I know the starters are looking a little bit wonky, so yeah, we'll figure out exactly what we need next week and get that process started. Before ending this week's video, I wanted to mention that I have found the little tank pickups. I found them on Amazon, but I also found them somewhere where you can get the tube here in custom lengths, which is good because I need this to be 16 inches. I'll include a link down in the description for where I found these, just in case somebody else is also looking for them. I've also ordered all of the other hardware I need for the aluminum fabricator to get started on the tanks. So I think we're in good shape there. And on that positive note, I'll end this week's video here. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!